They still talk about the road, a stretch of cracked pavement, now overgrown with weeds and silence, where time supposedly stopped in April of 1986. The locals call it Hollow Mile, though it was never officially named that. The map shows it as Route 54, a ribbon of old highway that cuts through cornfields, forests, and the ghosts of old farmhouses. But it's what vanished there that made it legendary. A yellow school bus, packed with 15 children and their teacher, disappeared somewhere along that road, and not a single soul has been found since. No bodies, no wreckage, no trace, and worst of all, no answers. The 10th of April, 1986 began like any other Thursday in the small town of Marlow Springs. Population 3,407. The sky was streaked with soft blue clouds. Birds chirped above the cracked sidewalks. It should have been an ordinary day in the sleepy farm, town ordinary at least by Marlow standards. But for 15 children at Marlow Elementary, today was anything but ordinary. A field trip meant something back then. It wasn't just a break from multiplication tables or sentence diagramming. It was an adventure freedom from chalkboards and bells. That morning, the excitement was contagious. The fifth graders bounced in their seats at breakfast, packed peanut butter sandwiches in metal lunchboxes, and tugged on windbreakers too big for spring. At the front of it all stood Miss Evelyn Harper, 34, a beloved and imaginative fifth grade teacher with thick glasses, curly brown hair, and a laugh that filled entire classrooms. She'd spent the past 2 weeks preparing the students for their outing to the Mayflower Pioneer Farm, a living history museum just a 45-minute drive north, through miles of open farmland and a winding detour along Route 54. "Roll call," Miss Evelyn said cheerfully, as the school bus hissed to a stop outside the elementary school. One by one, the students clambered aboard, their names echoing off the metal roof. Maggie Allen, Devin Brooks, Clara Chen. They settled into cracked leather seats, chattering, trading gum, some pressing faces to the windows. Behind the wheel sat Mr. Joe Wilkins, a 58-year-old driver with 22 years of service and a long beard tucked into his flannel shirt. He was quiet, dependable, and always 5 minutes early. At exactly 8:27 a.m., the yellow bus pulled out of the school parking lot, its tires crunching over loose gravel as it rolled toward Highway 10. Parents waved from the sidewalks. A few moms snapped Polaroids. One father, Arthur Dean, chased the bus halfway down the block, calling out to his 10-year-old daughter, Elaine, who had forgotten her brown bag lunch. She didn't hear him. That was the last time anyone in Marlow Springs saw Bus 79. 30 minutes into the drive, Marlow Springs took the familiar turn onto Route 54, a lesser-used detour that curved through wooded ridgelines and old farmland. He'd driven it many times. Despite the cracked pavement and overgrown edges, it was scenic and usually quiet. The kids didn't notice the silence. They sang 99 bottles of pop, giggled at inside jokes, and pointed out cows grazing in distant fields. Miss Evelyn moved up and down the aisle, reminding them to stay seated and save their candy for after the museum tour. The bus dipped into a shallow ravine, then climbed a slight hill surrounded by dense sycamore trees. The sun vanished behind their thick canopy. Then everything stopped. There were no skid marks on the road, no tire tracks turning off into the fields. The bus simply vanished. At 10:05 a.m., the Mayflower Pioneer receptionist called the school, wondering if the kids were running late. Miss Harper was known for being punctual. 10 minutes later, the principal tried calling the bus radio, no reply, and Joe Wilkins's wife reported him missing minutes later. The school office called the police, by 1:04 p.m. Then parents began calling in. By 10:30 a.m., the superintendent had notified the local police. By 3 p.m., local sheriff Arthur Daniels was en Route 54 with 2 patrol cars. His cruiser crawled mile by mile from the southern turnoff to the Museum Highway Junction. Nothing. Not a single sign of the bus. He retraced his steps, checked the ditches, pulled over twice to scan tree lines. Still nothing. Maybe they broke down, his partner suggested. Flat tire. Took a wrong turn. But there were no tire scraps, no signs of fresh tracks into the woods, no open gates or busted fences. Nothing but miles of road and silence. The road was quiet, nothing out of place except that bus 79 had, according to 2 witnesses, been seen entering the highway at 9:03 a.m. But no one ever saw it come out the other end. There were no skid marks, no signs of an accident, no evidence of braking or swerving. It was as though the bus had driven into thin air. Search teams combed every inch of the road, the ditches, the fields, and nearby woods. Nothing. State police were called in. Helicopters hovered overhead. Dogs sniffed the air and pawed at gravel and dust. Still, no bus and no children. By dusk, the entire town knew. By midnight, the National Guard had been called in. By 6 p.m. on the 21st of April 1986, Marlow Elementary School was no longer just a quiet building full of lockers and lesson plans. It had transformed into a hub of chaos, parents pacing, school staff in tears, local news vans with satellite dishes jammed into the front lot. The words "missing" and "children" don't go together in the minds of most people, but now they were being whispered together in every hallway, living room, and phone booth across town. Principal Helen Monroe stood by her office window, eyes fixed on the far end of the schoolyard, where Arthur Dean was shouting at a police officer. His wife, Sharon, sat slumped on a bench nearby, face pale, mouth trembling, her hands gripping a crushed paper lunch bag. Elaine's lunch. "I saw her get on that bus," Arthur was saying. "I saw her. Where the hell are they?" The police had no answers. Marlow Springs fell into a hush that lasted for weeks. Vigils were held nightly at the Methodist church and the high school gym. Parents camped outside the sheriff's office. News vans parked along Main Street, turning the grocery store parking lot into a media circus. Theories bloomed like weeds. An accident, and the bus had careened into some hidden ravine. A mass kidnapping. A government experiment gone wrong. A supernatural event, some whispered Hellgate, or time slip. Some locals recalled an old tale about Route 54 that the land it crossed had once belonged to the Omiska tribe, driven from it in the 1800s. Stories told of a place of forgetting, where even footprints vanished behind you. By May, with still no trace found, the FBI pulled back. The case grew cold. And then came the recordings. In early June, a local farmer named Will Barrett found something buried in the dirt a mile off Route 54, behind an old barn that had been struck by lightning years before. It was a battered Fisher-Price tape recorder, yellow plastic cracked from the weather. Its red buttons were faded, but the batteries inside still had enough juice to play. When Will hit play, a child's voice sang, "The wheels on the bus go round and round." The voice stopped suddenly, replaced by static. Then another voice. This time Miss Harper's was heard gently laughing, followed by an urgent whisper, Joe, stop the bus. There's something." The tape ended in a whine, followed by silence. It was turned over to authorities, but it offered no new leads. The barn was searched. So was the land. Nothing. Will Barrett never gave interviews again. Locals said he moved away a few years later, claiming strange things started happening to his animals' missing livestock, odd lights at night, and whispering winds that carried voices. Time dulled the story, but never erased it. Mothers grew old. Fathers died without answers. Marlow Springs shrank. The elementary school closed in 1997 and was later converted into a town hall. The road, Route 54, was officially decommissioned. Nature crept in, trees leaned across the shoulders, weeds cracked through the blacktop. And still, the bus had not been found. Children who once rode with Miss Harper now had children of their own. They told them to stay away from the Hollow Mile, not because they believed, but because they feared being wrong. And then, in 2006, the legend stirred again. A high school senior named Claire Dorsey went missing in October 2006 after a dare to walk the Hollow Mile at night. Her boyfriend waited in his truck while she stepped onto the road, flashlight in hand. She never came back. The police found her shoe at mile marker 7, the last confirmed location of bus 79. But a week later, Claire turned up half a mile away, disoriented, barefoot, and covered in dirt. She said she had walked into a fog, and then she saw the bus. It was old, rusted, but the paint it was yellow. I heard children laughing. She swore she saw faces pressed against the windows. The bus doors opened, and a woman stepped down, her voice soft, her face strangely unchanged since 1986. "Claire," she had said, smiling, "you're not supposed to be here yet." Then the fog returned, and Claire was found. Tests showed she had been missing for 7 days, but her body showed no signs of dehydration or starvation. Her story made headlines for a week. Paranormal investigators descended on Marlow Springs, but, as always, they left with nothing. Claire refused to speak about it again. She moved to Oregon. Some say she's never driven again. In 2019, a documentary filmmaker named Theo Granger reopened the case. Obsessed since childhood, Theo had always believed there was more to the story. He interviewed surviving parents, former search volunteers, and even found Joe Wilkins' nephew, who showed him Joe's old notebook. On the final page were scrawled 5 words: "The road eats the lost." Theo released his documentary, Lost Mile. The Marlow disappearance told wide acclaim. He was even invited to speak at crime and mystery conventions. But in 2022, Theo vanished. He was last seen filming a sunset along Route 54. His car was found parked beside the old mile marker 7. The keys were still in the ignition. The camera, left behind, contained hours of footage. But the last clip was only 3 seconds long. Static. Then a child's giggle. And finally, the faint sound of a bus horn. To this day, no consensus exists. Some believe the children were abducted by a cult. Others claim the government used the road as a testing ground for experimental technology. A few say it was a tear in space and time, that the bus still drives endlessly through a pocket dimension. Others whisper that the land remembers what was taken from it, that some echoes never stop echoing, and that certain roads don't lead anywhere they take. On the 40th anniversary of the disappearance, a plaque was erected by the townspeople, now fewer than 1,900 in number. It reads, "In memory of the 15 children and Miss Evelyn Harper, who vanished on the 10th of April, 1986, May they find peace wherever they are. Locals still leave flowers. Some leave old toys. Others come with children of their own and whisper warnings. And sometimes, at sunset, when the wind is just right, the hollow mile hums with something low and haunting. Some say it's the wind. Others say it's the bus, making one more loop on a road that forgot how to end.